Should you start an SEO agency in 2024? For a long time, SEO agencies have been a fantastic service business that many people looking to either start or grow making money online have decided to go down that route, starting off as a consultant and then hiring a few staff to help fulfill those deliverables. Or alternatively, you go to seojesus.com, click on apply, and you can join our white label program where we can provide you with our tried and tested high quality deliverables of content and backlinks. So in theory, it should be a nice, easy business model. You build your SOPs, you build your processes, you hire some staff in the Philippines, and you can charge premium rates to the USA, UK, Europe, etc. Now, I can tell you honestly, of course, that is the dream, but doesn't actually work out like that. I'm still very heavily involved in my day-to-day operations. It's a constantly changing landscape and market in terms of the latest tactics that are working the best. And probably more so than other business models, you've really got to stay on top of the latest changes. So I'm investing continually in conferences, networks, masterminds, just to make sure my knowledge is always at the forefront of what it can be. And I can pass on those learnings to my clients to get the best results. But there are plenty of people out there who started SEO agencies 10 years ago when they were even more of this easy to access, low barrier to entry, high margin kinds of services, where it was almost like a fad that where if you wanted to create a business of some sort, you would just start an SEO agency. I've literally heard people say that in talks at conferences, saying that's how they got into SEO. It just seemed like a convenient thing to do. But now when I meet these people, they often turn to me and they hear that I run an SEO agency and they say, how on earth did you do that? I was doing it 10 years ago, but then there's this big update or it got too hard, and I don't see how anyone can rank these days. Well, clearly I did not get the memo because I've still got businesses doing fantastically well with me. We're talking post-COVID, post-updates, post-AI, all these headwinds that everyone's talking about, and my clients are continuing to smash it. This one's gone up consistently and is just about to hit 60,000 visitors per month. Then we have this e-com website, they're just about to hit 10,000 visitors per month. And so while I wouldn't say that SEO is easy by any means, it is still perfectly possible. It is still working really well as long as you know what you're doing. So of course it comes as no surprise that these people who saw just a quick little opportunity 10 years ago are now struggling if they didn't actually invest in taking that next cutting edge and actually growing their business. Certainly anytime I feel vulnerable or a sense of anxiety, I just remember the saying and book by Cal Newport, be so good they can't ignore you. And this is what we see in every industry, that the way to be really bulletproof is just to double down and be the best in your industry. You might not make top 1%, but top 10%, top 5% is perfectly good enough. And I sense a lot of this noise that you're hearing about agencies that failed in the past or the SEO market dying is largely down to that. Mediocre is never going to last. You have to be exceptional. And that's perfectly possible. You just have to dig in and focus. But still, I've spoken to lots of really good agency owners over the last couple of months, all saying the same kind of thing, that the market is much slower than it was just a year ago or 2 years ago. And there's definitely this fear that we know that AI is not going to replace SEO, that Google is going to continue its market dominance for a sustained number of years still. And if anything, the opportunities of AI outweigh the threats. AI overviews on search results are just another opportunity to rank. And yes, Google has packed in far more ads above the fold over the last year or two, but we know that the majority of consumers skip past those because they don't find them relevant and valuable. Therefore, SEO converts far better than paid ads. So the real fear for most of us is, do business owners actually understand the value of SEO and the value of investing in SEO when there's all this noise in the market that SEO is dying, Google is broken, and AI is going to take over? Well, let's just have a look at Google Trends. So if we come down here, if we just put in SEO, then we can see it's largely flat. There hasn't been a massive increase or a massive decline. So let's be a bit more specific and put in SEO agency. Now I can see we've got a high cost per click of $7 here. That gives us an idea of how commercial this traffic is. And we've got this weird spike in 2021, 2022, but generally there hasn't been a notable decline over the last 2 years. Certainly in early 22, it was much lower than in Q4 of 2021. I mean, generally a lot of sales happen in Q4. So if we come back to earlier in the year, so it looks like there was a bit of a market rise throughout 2021, but still not a significant decline after that. In fact, in anything over the last couple of months, demand seems to have increased slightly. Now we can really niche this down. Let's put in something like affordable SEO services. So we don't really have enough data here, but it's not showing really any major peaks or troughs, maybe a peak early 2023. Let's look at local SEO services. And again, weird spike here in February 2022, but no real major increase or decrease. So at least from a broader market perspective, it doesn't look like the market's dying. It doesn't look like all the business owners around the world have decided SEO is dead, I don't want it anymore. Now, I think we have to be realistic and step back a bit here. Most of the SEO agency owners I talk to, we all have to remember we're at the rock face. We're looking at every micro detail of what's going on in the industry, what's going on with Google's algorithm, which your average business owner just doesn't understand. What your business owner cares about is much broader. It's the global economy as a whole. And to me, I think that's where the issue lies currently. Because we know that SEO is still well and working really well and converting for lots of businesses. This is one of my insurance clients where you might notice this steep drop-off in traffic, and that's because they had a lot of low-intent informational content on the site where we were purely going for volume, purely going for topical authority, and a lot of that has died off through various different reasons, algorithm updates, helpful content, AI. But the core commercial pages, 90% of the revenue of this site was coming from just a few key money pages, and they're still ranking perfectly well because they're fulfilling a commercial intent. It's people looking for a certain type of insurance, finding a page that says, we do that kind of insurance, they're right at the top, and they convert right there on the phone. So SEO still works really well. So why are a lot of agency owners struggling? And I think it literally comes down to this graph where we might be worried about AI overviews, algorithm updates, helpful content, etc. But I think to the economy and to businesses around the world as a whole, they're more concerned about this uncertainty index. This year alone, we've currently got 2 major war zones around the world. Meanwhile, we've got China threatening to invade Taiwan. We have the big US election coming up in November. We've also got an election very soon in the UK. And this is on top of everything else that's been going on. The recovery from the global pandemic. Because of these wars and the pandemic, we've got interest rates through the roof. And what happens when interest rates go through the roof is growth tends to stop. It's much easier to hold on to cash and get those interest rates rather than borrow money to launch something new. So if we look at this uncertainty index, obviously we had a massive spike for coronavirus. That came right down. But now, over the last few months, we're back up to 200 here, which is on the same level as 2016, where we had Brexit and the 2016 US election. We're actually getting up to a similar level as US recession in 9/11 and the Iraq war and the outbreak of SARS. So this isn't a massive outlier. This isn't like coronavirus or not as high as some of these peaks, but comparatively speaking, we had this recovery after coronavirus, and now suddenly all this uncertainty is picking up again. So generally around the world, the market sentiment is hold on to your cash. Now, what this means for agency owners is the mistake a lot of people make, myself included at times, is investing too heavily in growth. You get a new client and you think, great, I can now hire a new member of staff, make our service bigger, better, spend more on advertising. I can take that new client and reinvest those proceeds into more growth to get another client and try and scale up really fast. But the danger with that is exactly as we've been talking about. What if you hit a slowdown in the market and you have not prepared for it? Suddenly you've got all the staff, you've got this marketing funnel, but it's no good if no one's actually in a buying mood at that time. It can be a very short period of time. Even seasonality plays into these kinds of things. Like I say, Q4 tends to be really good and Q1, but middle of the year tends to be much more of a slowdown. So as an agency owner, you really have to try and weather the storms by, again, hoarding your cash and holding on to some of that margin. This was talked about by Mike Michalowicz in Profit First. It's one of those books where you don't really need to read the full book, you just need the fundamental picture, which he basically says so many people fall into that trap of the sort of Silicon Valley venture capital model. Let's scale up fast, reinvest everything, and we'll make money later. And he says for most businesses, that's really bad advice. You need to make money now. You need to take money off the table and keep it secure. So as soon as you get money coming, put your margin into a secure pot and budget ahead of time for staff, your own compensation. But make sure you have this rainy day funds for in case the market goes dry for a period. Used to this, and it's basically to do with leveling the market. Because remember what I said about how you only need to be in the top 5% to actually do really well. And if you're in that top percentage, then you're constantly threatened by those people you just wade into the industry thinking, this looks like a nice, easy industry, low barrier to entry, high margin. I can buy some SOPs, hire some cheap staff, offer the services relatively cheap, undercut my competitors, and still make a decent payout at the end of it. Now, there's a lot of negative sentiment in the SEO market as a whole, and I'd say the majority of that comes from a lot of the website owners who have unfortunately been unfairly beaten by recent Google updates. It used to be you could start a blog, monetize with ads and affiliate, and perfectly make a few $1,000s per month that way. And these days, that's so much harder. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but Google has very clearly slapped that whole industry as a model. And the problem here we're finding is that those people probably represented 80–90% of a lot of the online discourse on SEO, and therefore actual business owners, e-com store owners, local services are hearing that noise of my site's tanked or Google's changed, Google doesn't work anymore, SEO is dead, and are therefore hearing some of that negative sentiment. Whereas if you have a product, if you have a service, you can actually rank that really well. In fact, I would say it ranks even better than ever because you no longer have 10 affiliate sites above you who are all reviewing and comparing your kinds of products, keeping you further down on the Google result. Instead, e-com sites have received a massive boost, where without much work, you can be at the top of page 1 now. And it's the same thing with agency owners, and should you start an SEO agency in 2024, I would say that all this negative sentiment, the slowdown in the market, all it means is a lot of the wannabes have been cleared out. Lots of people saying SEO doesn't work, I'm quitting, and that's great news for anyone, maybe yourself watching this video, who has dug down and really honed their craft over the last few years. They don't see it as a quick buck. They don't see it as just a simple machine, buy an SOP, get cheap staff, rinse and repeat. You've probably seen Facebook ads for a lot of these types of services that say, we will guarantee you page 1 rankings for $500 a month, without even considering what industry you're in, your niche, your keywords. And so we know that all they're really doing is taking the $500 a month and disappearing, not actually doing any work, because they're not actually committing to any deliverables. So if you can commit to being in the top 5% of SEO talent, then absolutely the world's your oyster. You can still do really well with an SEO agency. There are still hungry business owners, product owners around the world who have got the budget, they've got a machine that's working, and they want to build that evergreen presence. They want to get off a reliance on ads. They want to build that organic presence so that in a few years' time, whether it's AI overviews or another ranking factor, they still show up at the top of Google for the people who are searching for their solution. Even if it's ChatGPT that becomes the new Google search, chances are the same SEO principles can be applied to ranking #1 in ChatGPT. So should you start an SEO agency in 2024? Absolutely, if you're prepared to commit and you genuinely have the skills. And you don't have to have the skills yourself. You could just be a good project manager and be able to hire the right talent into your agency. But if you think it's just a quick buck, you can do the bare minimum and just repeat the same templates that have been used for 10 years. And meanwhile, you're going to spend aggressively on ads, narrow your margins right down to try and scale up really quickly, then that's where you're potentially going to get into trouble. But for those of you who do know the craft, who have knuckled down, I think the leveling effects we're going to see over the next few months could be a massive advantage for you. The true test of who's in it for the long term and is actually prepared to weather the storm.